Bloodborne PSX, also known as the Bloodborne Demake, is quite simply amazing. Billy here, welcome to Current Kit Games. Let's talk about Bloodborne PSX. I've been hooked on it, and I honestly thought it'd be 15 minutes of this is cool, and then I move on to something else. But I'm still playing it and working my way through Yharnam. It's actually pretty meaty and a bit difficult. That's when I started thinking I should go back and try some PS1 games to see if there are any that give a similar experience to Bloodborne PSX. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Bloodborne PSX is a video game remake of the first handful of hours of Bloodborne, plus some adjustments and additional content, created by Lilith Walther of LW Media. This is a fan-made, free, downloadable video game for your PC. A demake is basically a remaking of a video game, not with better graphics and improvements, but the exact opposite, making it seem as if it was made for an older console or PC era. In Bloodborne PSX's case, what if Bloodborne was made for PlayStation 1? The game comes with all the bells and whistles for recreating the look and feel of the PlayStation 1. Aside from graphical settings to make the game look actually worse, reproducing CRT scan lines, those weird PS1 graphical wobbles, awful loading screens, etc. And in Bloodborne PSX's case, controls that do not include the analog sticks. Yes, as of now, you can only use the D-pad like the original PlayStation controller, not the dual analog controller or that first DualShock. Hammer control on L2 and R2, trick weapon form changes requiring a trip to the menu, frame drops and long loading screens. This is cool shit, but to be clear, this isn't actually running on PS1 hardware. It's only made to look as if it is. I decided to compile a whole list of games that I thought might give a similar Bloodborne experience. Wanted to see how they play in Control in comparison, if they scratch that Bloodborne itch, and if I want to continue to play them. I actually didn't play a lot of 3D action games back on the PS1, mostly because I tried games like Tomb Raider and I thought they played like absolute garbage and I didn't want anything to do with it. Now I guess an obvious place to start is From Software games themselves from this era. Getting right into this, games such as Armored Core, a third-person mech shooter, is not really what we're looking for here, so I'm skipping it. These aren't going to be super in-depth analysis of each game, just my experience booting them up, playing them a bit so I can get an idea. You may have had great times with these games back in the day, or some of them might be your favorites, but I'm just playing them a little bit to get an experience of how they, feel. But anyways, first up, From Software's first-person games. Now, From Software had a bunch of first-person role-playing / dungeon crawling games, King's Field 1, 2, and 3. I tried out King's Field 1 and 2, and I didn't last 10 minutes between both games. The controls, move on the D-pad, strafe on L1 and R1, look up and down with L2 and R2. I get it. My issue was, and maybe I just need to get good, but I swung my sword a few times. Stamina takes forever to load back up. The first enemies I faced murdered me in seconds, so I guess that's a pretty good comparison to Bloodborne, but I really did not enjoy my time with these King's Field games, so I moved on pretty quickly. And I'm going to throw in Shadow Tower along with these games. I didn't even last 5 minutes in this one. A similar game focused more on the dungeon aspect than story. Definitely more Dark Souls vibes than Bloodborne. It's a creepy game that actually uses soul pods to level your character up. I'm no stranger to these first-person dungeon crawler games. I enjoyed the Legend of Grimrock games as well as some Etrian Odyssey and even the Dark Spire on DS. The latter brutally difficult, and that's what I'm getting with King's Field and Shadow Tower games. I think some of the difficulty unfortunately stems from extremely clunky combat, movement, and performance on the PS1. Do I want to keep playing these games? No, I don't. I've heard some good things about King's Field 4, but that's a PS2 game. Shadow Tower seemed a bit more interesting, but the clunky gameplay, I don't know, I'm sure there's just way better experiences for me to play that might not be on PS1. Echo Knight. Echo Knight is another first-person game, but from what I played, there is no combat. This is more of a survival horror adventure game. The only attachment to Bloodborne seems to be the theme, as they're both kind of horror. I'm getting some Eldritch horror vibes from this game. What is Echo Knight? A story-driven puzzle-solving game, Echo Knight revolves around Richard Osman and his journey to investigate the mysterious disappearance of the ship Orpheus. Investing certain objects transports Richard to the past to investigate what the hell's going on? Do I want to keep playing? This one is definitely not anything like Bloodborne PSX, but it has me intrigued. I sort of want to keep playing through it since there doesn't seem to be any action, so I don't really have a problem with the first-person camera. And it's about 5 to 6 hours long, so 5 to 6 hours for an interesting story, I'm down. Let's move away from Software and onto some games that should be closer to Bloodborne PSX. First, some quick mentions. I didn't play any of these because they don't really fit the bill on what I'm going for. These are your tank-controlled horror games: Alone in the Dark, Resident Evil 1 and 2, Dino Crisis 1 and 2, Silent Hill, and Fear Effect 1 and 2. They're just very slow moving for the most part, and they're not really the 3D action I'm looking for. I'm also leaving out the medieval games because they're a little too whimsical for what I'm looking for. Theme and aesthetics. Nightmare Creatures. The first Nightmare Creatures game was an obvious choice to look at. Your character has melee weapons and a gun, and they fight against gothic horror monsters. Alright, sign me up with that. It's 1934 London. Sighting of ungodly monsters around the city sends London into a panic due to the mad scientist and occultist Adam Crowley. There are 2 characters to choose from: Ignatius, a bow staff-wielding priest and occult expert, and Nadia, the daughter of a famous immunologist. Alright, Nadia has a sword while Iggy has a bow staff, so who do you think I'm going with? Now, this game is from 1997, but, well, I expected some better camera controls, as it's this weird combination of tank controls and a camera that sort of follows you over the shoulder. If you want to move the camera left or right, you actually have to stop moving and hit left or right on the D-pad, so you sort of sidestep to get the camera behind you the way you want it. I found the camera to get caught up a lot, and sometimes it doesn't move where you want to. You're moving forward, but now you're moving left because the camera angle kind of changed. You also could be in the middle of a fight and have to stop moving and attacking so you can face the enemy the correct way. Combat is weird. There are some combos on square for your weapon and X for more physical attacks such as kicks. Holding up does a slightly different attack. R2 allows you to use an item, a big one your gun, but once you use it once, you're out of ammo basically and can't use it again until you find more. The game is just really clunky. I don't know if I would have liked it back in the day if I owned or rented it. Yeah, it probably has the most in common with Bloodborne PSX than any other game I'll look at, but just the clunkiness is holding me back a lot from wanting to play more. A lot of 3D games from this era just don't hold up because of these poor control schemes and the bad 3D graphics, but I think Nightmare Creatures actually looks okay for the time. Do I want to keep playing it? No, I don't really want to load up Nightmare Creatures ever again. Nightmare Creatures 2? Okay, this game starts out fucking strong. Rob Zombie chugging along during that autoplay intro, and his music is in a bunch of the cutscenes. Adam Crowley, the antagonist from the first game, is back, but this time it's 1934, and you play as Herbert Wallace, a patient at Crowley's hospital who escapes armed with an axe. The game is actually a huge upgrade to the original. It feels better, it looks better. I mean, Herbert gets to finish off enemies with fatalities, so who doesn't freaking love that? Still has that combo of half tank controls, half following camera, but it works a little bit better here. And compared to Bloodborne PSX, that gothic horror and light puzzle solving is there. Do I want to keep playing? I gave it about a half hour and it seems okay. I wasn't really jonesing to play it after I turned it off though, so honestly I probably won't load it up. Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain. Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain is interesting because I didn't know this was a 2D game. Honestly, when I hear Legacy of Kain, I think of Soul Reaver, not Blood Omen. Sharing a decent amount of similarities with Bloodborne PSX, the gothic fantasy horror theme, puzzle solving, hack and slash combat, and difficulty. The protagonist, Kain, is an anti-hero, as he is a nobleman who is murdered in the opening of the game, only to be revived as a vampire with a chance for revenge. Combat does leave a lot to be desired, as when you swing your sword, it sort of feels like you're not hitting enemies, you're just swinging in the air, and you see blood on the screen. It's just, I don't know, I feel like there should have been a better noise for attacking. Do I want to keep playing? I was actually surprised how interesting Blood Omen is. I didn't realize it was a sort of 2D top-down Castlevania type experience. The story, the voiceovers, the 2D top-down perspective, and the dungeon crawling elements seems pretty cool. I only turned it off because I encountered a puzzle I just couldn't get past, so I would definitely play this again, maybe with a walkthrough in hand. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. Taking place 1500 years after Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver is a different beast. A 3D action-adventure game featuring Raziel, a disfigured, ghostly vampire who must now ingest souls instead of blood. With platforming, puzzles, and hack-and-slash fighting, it seems like a good game to test out to compare to Bloodborne PSX. In my experience, I really didn't enjoy this one. Just goes back to these old 3D games with clunky controls and fighting. I mean, look at this sequence, which I immediately turned the game off after. I chased this enemy around for a good 60 seconds. If that isn't any indication of how later encounters will be, I'm out. But I gotta mention, this is the first game that I checked out that has a very similar control scheme to Bloodborne PSX, in reference to the camera. I forget if it's L1R1 or L2R2, but they control the camera, albeit inverted compared to Bloodborne, so it was a little tough to get used to. Do I want to keep playing? No, I don't. Having no nostalgia for this one, I don't see myself wanting to power through the jankiness of the controls and combat. Doesn't really do it for me. Dungeon crawlers. Now for the hell of it, I looked at a few 3D dungeon crawlers. Just about all of these have PC counterparts that probably run, play, and look way better than their PS1 versions, but I'm sticking with good old PS1 here. Darkstone. An action RPG dungeon crawler, aka a Diablo clone. You start in a village and work your way to different maps that have their own quest lines and dungeons. Darkstone has a lot of character options, weapon and item drops, armor, magic, etc. This game actually was pretty charming. I mean, yeah, I'll sound like a broken record here, but games from this era have that special quality of jank that I typically go back to now, play for a few minutes and go, nah. Darkstone, I messed around with for about 40 minutes, and I had some fun with it. It's quite a ways away from Bloodborne PSX, so I won't spend too much time on it. Although there are 3 camera options, I found them to all be pretty terrible. I had trouble figuring out where the hell I was going the majority of the time. The action is not really close to that 3D action we were looking for in this experiment. Do I want to keep playing? Are there much better Diablo clones to dive into? Yeah, of course. If you really want to tackle a PS1 dungeon crawler, this one doesn't seem to be a terrible choice. But I'll most likely forget about this game. Deathtrap Dungeon. Another action-adventure dungeon crawler, this time more closely resembling Bloodborne PSX and the Dark Souls series. There's some platforming, puzzle solving, and bad guy killing. While kind of cool for a PS1 game, I found it to just play terribly. More tanky controls and jank. Do I want to keep playing? I most certainly do not. This was not a fun experience. Diablo. This is actually a version of Diablo I always wanted to own back in the day. Mostly because it included couch co-op. I haven't played the original Diablo in years, and I don't remember the PC version being this choppy, but wow, this game looks old. The menu system, I mean, is what it is because it's on a controller, but boy, I do not want to deal with it. It's Diablo, it's a third-person dungeon crawler. Nothing here really reminded me of Bloodborne PSX other than maybe some of the themes. Do I want to keep playing? Nah. There are way other Diablo options or clones out there that I've sunk way more hours in and I'd rather play than this, honestly. Vagrant Story. Okay, this one I played the hell out of back in 2000 on my PS1. Vagrant Story is a very unique third-person action RPG dungeon crawler. Ashley Riot explores the city of Leomond with a majority of his time spent in the catacombs, encountering monsters, knights, ghouls, and ghosts. The setting is definitely closer to that of Dark Souls than Bloodborne, but it can be a bit creepy at times. The gameplay loop consists of working your way through rooms of the dungeon, taking out enemies, solving box puzzles, finding keys, backtracking, etc. Cut in between exploration are character-heavy cutscenes, but Vagrant Story's gameplay is one of the most unique systems out there. Ashley runs around, but when the attack button is pressed, after he pulls out his weapon, a wire sphere pops out and time is frozen. Ashley can now attack different limbs, all with customizable combinations set to 3 of the face buttons. Pulling off the correct timing allows you to keep your combo going, but watch out as your risk will increase with each successful hit, and the higher risk you accumulate, the lower your hit percentage accuracy and defense becomes. Luckily, you can pull off combos while being attacked yourself, time your enemies strike correctly and heal yourself 50% of the damage. At full health already, counterattack for 50% of their current strike. It's a very cool system that only expands with magic, weapon type specific abilities, and with intensely deep weapon customization, crafting, and leveling systems. I could probably speak for an hour on this, but I think this brings the point across. Now no, this doesn't play anything like Bloodborne PSX, but man, I forgot how awesome this game is. Do I want to keep playing? Let me put it this way. I spent my entire weekend playing Bloodborne PSX, which was about 6 hours worth, and then playing all these games and capturing them and writing my thoughts down. The majority of the games I gave between like 10 and 20 minutes. Vagrant Story, I played for an hour and a half and kind of didn't want to turn it off. So yeah, I definitely want to play more Vagrant Story. I kind of want to play through the whole thing and make a video on it. So if you haven't ever played Vagrant Story and any of what I've said or shown seems interesting to you, I say definitely check it out. I highly recommend it. It's available as a PS1 classic on PS3, Vita, and PSP by other means, and a physical copy will probably run you like $80 to $100. Well, I guess I can safely conclude that none of these games really give a fun Bloodborne PSX-like experience. Now sure, there are tons of Soulsborne clones out there at this point, but we never really saw anything like it back in the PS1 era. I think that only goes to show you how actually awesome the Bloodborne PSX Demake actually is. I'd love to see it developed a bit more. I know Lilith is currently working on split-screen couch co-op, which is all kinds of awesome. Personally, I don't know how much use I would have for that now, but back in the day, I would have been all over that. The nostalgia factor is pretty sweet. And I read in the LW Media forums that the code is going to be released at some point, allowing for others to expand and work on the game. Personally, I would love a controller option that allows for camera control on the right stick. Although I did get pretty used to this control scheme to the point that when I loaded up Bloodborne proper, I was all over the place with controlling it. I kept using L2 and R2, and using the right stick just kind of felt off. It felt way too quick. It's kind of funny. I know putting the camera control on the right stick might be a little out of era, but I think it would improve the experience of playing this game. It's not really running on PS1 hardware, so give the option to remap. That'd be cool. For these old PS1 games, I think the camera control and the resulting almost unintended difficulty that comes along with the poor controls is what gets me to bounce on these games after 5 or 10 minutes. And some of these might be great experiences with depth and stories, but if I keep dying over and over again due to tank controls, I'm just gonna bounce. Did I miss out on any PS1 games or games from this era to check out? If there are a lot more, maybe I could put together a part 2. Or if people like this video, I could maybe jump into the PS2, GameCube, and original Xbox era. So like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see that. Until next time, see ya.